Miss Lorna, he is adjusting the volume. We were hearing you, but not loud enough. Do you want her to try now? Hold on 1 minute. All right, just hold on, Lorna. He is working on the sound for a minute. I am going to move on to read the other bios, and then we'll come back to you. Let me just go through the bios, and then we'll come back to you. Okay. So we have sitting next to us Ms. Jamaro Tara Poiter. Jamaro is the current Director of Community Outreach and Anti-Human Trafficking Coordinator with the Office of the State Attorney for the 17th Judicial Circuit, assigned to the Sexual Battery and Child Abuse Unit. Listen, her bio is so extensive. Jamaro's level of expertise consists of assisting and working directly with victims, survivors of sexual battery assault, domestic violence, human trafficking, domestic minor sex trafficking, and commercial sexual exploitation of children. She is also the current president of the Broward Human Trafficking Coalition. She has hosted and coordinated and facilitated multiple meetings between Global Ties International of Miami, Broward Human Trafficking Coalition. She is a recipient of Ruby Award from Soroptimus, the Superior Community Service Award from the Broward Crime Commission, and Community Trailblazer Award. She is a member of Who's Who in America, and in 2023 received congressional recognition from U.S. Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz for her outstanding invaluable service of community. She has co-authored of Amazon's #1 best-selling book, Sister to Sister, Untold Stories of Courage, Connection, and Community. Ladies and gentlemen, Jamaro Tara Poiter. How are we doing? All right, can you go ahead and say something? It's still not. All right, just hold on. We tested it earlier and it worked perfect. Yes, Joy, you want to try? Are you on mute? Can you hear me? Joy? Okay. All right, we're hearing, if we put the mic to it, would that make it any better? All right, let me move on. Hang in there, guys. We're coming. We're working on it. Let me move on. So we have joining us on Zoom Miss Joy L. Crawford. Joy is a life and transformational influencer, co-founder, development and training coordinator of E for Life Jamaica, motivational interview network trainer member. She leads here Ambassador, Child and Girls' Rights Defender, and Gender-Based Violence Advocate. She is a 2023 Pioneer Award, Flair Magazine, 2023 Gender Equality Award, Gender-Based Violence Prevention and Response Award, Individual Recognition. For more than 20 years, Ms. Crawford has facilitated services for girls, young women at risk of violations. She has been a transformative voice focusing on child trafficking with grassroots communities and challenging socio-cultural norms, addressing a cross-cutting issue of human rights survivor-centered program, childhood sexual violations, and socio-health outcomes. Ladies and gentlemen, Joy Crawford is here in the red from E for Life. Thank you for joining us, Joy. And she's joining from Jamaica. So everyone who is on Zoom here right now is joining us live from Jamaica. All right, so we have Monica Ubals. Monica is MS is currently a behavioral health clinician with the Nancy J. Cotterman Center, where she works providing supportive services to human trafficking survivors. She holds a master's degree in clinical psychology and began her career working as a child and family therapist at Naval's Mental Health and Wellness Center in Burien, Washington, before returning to South Florida. She has worked as a post-release service case manager for unaccompanied children, where she gained valuable insight into the impact of human trafficking on unaccompanied minors. She then worked as child protective investigator with the Broward Sheriff's Office before becoming a certified in human trafficking investigation. Ladies and gentlemen, Monica Ubals. Joy, can you say something? One of you joining from Jamaica. Joy? Lorna? Okay, their cameras off. They're probably multitasking. I'll come back to them. All right, we have Miss Sharday O'Connor. Sharday O'Connor is a dedicated advocate for social and criminal justice, hailing from Broward County, Florida. Sharday began her career as a senior courtroom specialist at the Broward County Clerk of Courts Juvenile Division. In 2022, Sharday elevated her career by becoming the Alternative Sanctions Coordinator for the 17th Judicial Circuit Court Administration. Here, she made a profound impact by assisting over 100 families in the juvenile court system. Sharday earned a Master's of Human Services in Child Protection from Nova Southeastern University, graduated magna cum laude. She also holds professional certification in trauma and resilience, as well as human trafficking prevention and intervention from Florida State University. She currently serves as a behavioral health clinician at the Nancy J. Cotterman Center. Outside of her professional endeavors, Sharday remains actively involved in community as a young adult minister leader at Mount Olive SDA Church in Fort Lauderdale. Ladies and gentlemen, Sharday O'Connor. All right, ladies on Zoom, what can any one of you say something? Let's see if we've gotten the volume straight.
Evening.
Ah, yes.
Better?
Yes, thank you, thank you. Let's give a round of applause to, what's your name? Alfonso. Thank you, Alfonso, for assisting us. All right, go ahead and finish your introduction, and then we'll move on to the next bio.
That's me, right?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Dr. Laverne Deere, moderator and founder CEO of Female Development World Organization, panelists, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Mine is a pleasure to bring you warm greetings from Winrock International, and specifically the USAID Supporting Victims of Violence Activity Jamaica, which is where I am employed. Human trafficking.
Alfonso. Oh, she's frozen. Okay. You're frozen. All right, so that's an internet issue.
We should feel safe.
Ah, there you go.
I'm not exempt. Are you hearing?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So it is quite welcoming that FDWO has seen the need to convene the symposium to amplify the voice of state and non-state actors who work tirelessly to heighten awareness and spur action against the scourge of human trafficking. Winrock International sincerely commends FDWO for this symposium. Like yourselves, our organization, being mindful of the devastating effects of this modern form of slavery, has been implementing various anti-trafficking initiatives in several countries. In Jamaica, between 2018 and 2022, under the Jamaica-US Child Compact Project, through the collaborative efforts of the US and Jamaican governments, Winrock International developed a national referral mechanism. I am pleased to report that the National Task Force Against Trafficking in Persons, NATFATIP, integrated the national referral mechanism into its handbook for sustainability and received key anti-trafficking deliverables from Winrock International to guide government professionals as they continue working to address victims and survivors of human trafficking. We also introduced national minimum standards of care for child trafficking victims and delivered a psychosocial training program to 371 service providers, including psychologists, educators, social workers, and case managers in government and civil society organizations. These are but a few of our accomplishments over the period, and we continue through our partnerships to make inroads against human trafficking. So this evening, Winrock International and all our partners join hands and heart with FDWO and all who will be presenting this evening in the fight against human trafficking, because we too desire to create safer neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lorna. Thank you, Winrock. All right, before we go to Miss Audrey Bodai, I am going to our Sergeant Erica Rocky, Broward Sheriff's Office, Internet Crimes Against Children and Human Trafficking Unit. Sergeant Rocky has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Florida International University. Sergeant Rocky has been in law enforcement since 2008. In 2014, Sergeant Rocky became a detective with the Internet Crime Against Children and Human Trafficking Unit. During her time in the unit, she investigated hundreds of crimes pertaining to the exploitation of children and assisted in several human trafficking operations. In addition to investigating and arresting violent predators, Sergeant Rocky is a certified forensic examiner. In 2021, she was promoted and is now the supervisor for the Broward Sheriff's Office, Internet Crimes Against Children and Human Trafficking. Ladies and gentlemen, Sergeant Erica Rocky. And we have her partner next to her, and I don't have a bio, so I'm gonna let her do her bio real quick. Go right ahead. Is it on?
Testing. Okay. My name's Detective Vanessa Encina. I work for the Broward Sheriff's Office in the Special Victims Unit. I've been in law enforcement since 2009 when I was sworn. I worked in California as a police officer, and I came over to Florida in 2014. And in 2019, I became a member of our Special Victims Unit, where I've taken many courses involved in speaking to children who have been the victim of a sexual abuse. So I'm basically a certified forensic interviewer for minor children. I work closely with the Nancy J. Cotterman Center, and that is my specialty. So I've been there for about 5 years now.
Thank you, Detective. And finally, we have Miss Audrey Bodai. Miss Audrey, I did not get her bio, so I am going to also let her do her self-introduction. Miss Audrey is the manager of the Jamaica National Task Force Against Trafficking in Person. She plays a very important role in combating human trafficking across Jamaica. Miss Bodai, are you there? All right, she probably stepped away, so we will come back to Miss Bodai. Okay. Ladies ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have gotten something to eat or drink so you can be well nourished while we feed you with this information that we hope you will walk away with to keep yourself safe and your family safe and community safe. Human trafficking is the trade of humans for the purpose of forced labor, sexual slavery, or commercial sexual exploitation. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime states, the crime of trafficking in person has 3 fundamental elements, and I want you to listen to this. The act, which is the what, which is recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of persons. The means, which is the how, which is threat or use of force, coercion, abduction, fraud, deception, abuse of power, or vulnerability, or giving payments or benefits to a person in control of the victim. And the purpose, which is the why, for the purpose of exploitation, which includes a minimum, the exploitation of others or other forms of sexual exploitation, forced labor, or services. Every year, countless lives are lost as a result of organized crime, drug-related health problems and violence, firearm deaths, and the unscrupulous methods and motives of human traffickers and migrant smugglers are all a part of this. The hidden cost to society is transnational organized crime involves virtually all serious profit-motivated criminal actions of an international nature where more than one country is involved. It threatens peace and human security, leads to human rights being violated, and undermines the economic, social, cultural, political, and civil development of societies around the world. The vast sums of money involved can compromise legitimate economies and have a direct impact on government. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is why we're here today. And this is why we also have our international partners to join us, because Florida is number 3 in reported case of human trafficking, and I've always stated that the top 3 states are border states. So it's important for us to work with our partners on the international side to hear from them and for them to hear from us. So this is why we have them on the call today. And Ms. Bodai, whenever you're ready, just let us know. But we're going to move right on into the topic.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead and introduce yourself, please, and give your introduction.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having us. I agree with the other 2 speakers in congratulating Dr. Laverdiere and the team from FDWO and all the other fellow panelists and other persons who are there, all the officials. So they say protocol observed. I am very grateful and honored to be part of this panel, this discussion, this symposium. It's very important to us here in Jamaica to collaborate and carry out the work as a team and going on in partnership. We also have benefited, definitely. I listened to Ms. Graham, and I had in my greeting as well to say that what I'm about to say is that we, Government of Jamaica, at the National Task Force Against Trafficking in Person, benefited from the Child Protection Compact Partnership, the MOU between the government of the United States of America and the government of Jamaica, which helped to strengthen the efforts of our government to effectively prosecute and convict child traffickers and identify victims of child trafficking to provide comprehensive trauma-informed care for child victims of these crimes. So we just want to say how much we appreciate being on this panel. Jamaica, along with every country in the world, is affected by the crime of trafficking in persons, whether directly or indirectly. Human trafficking is an organized criminal activity in which human beings are treated as a possession to be controlled and exploited, as being forced into prostitution or involuntary labor. So, in our flyers, in our articulation, in our booklets, and so on, we say human trafficking, also called trafficking in persons, is a form of modern-day slavery, which seeks to entrap and enslave the most vulnerable of our people, especially women and children. No longer is slavery restricted to physical shackles and multiple whips. This form of slavery utilizes contemporary techniques and strategies to deceive and exploit, to financially or otherwise provide beneficial returns to the perpetrators. So given the name...
You're frozen, Ms. Bodai. All right, we'll come back to her to finish. Let's move on to just let us know when you're back, Ms. Bodai. Jamaro, you are the president of the National Human Trafficking Task Force. Help us to understand what the task force does for Broward County, the work that you've been doing, and how it helps to raise awareness to our communities.
Okay,
Right. So,
thank you for that question.
Jamaica.
Oh, are you back? All right, Ms. Bodai, we'll come back to you. You're freezing up a little bit, so just hold on for a minute. All right, we'll be right back to you.
Okay.
Thank you. So I'm actually the coordinator for the task force, and the Broward Human Trafficking Task Force was created out of the Broward County State Attorney's Office. The idea came from the former State Attorney, Mr. Michael Satz, and State Attorney Pryor has done an amazing job of continuing that vision. And so the task force is made up of several partners. We have federal and state partners, and we have local law enforcement, who's also a part of that task force, where we have signed MOUs. We also have a partnership with the United States Attorney's Office, because I'm sure everybody knows here, human trafficking can be prosecuted in both state and federal court, state and federal court. So it's very important for us to have those relationships with our federal partners. The task force in Broward County is very unique in the sense is that we have a victim-centered approach. So the task force understands, and the task force officers as well as Mr. Pryor understands, that human trafficking cases, whether it's on a state level or federal level, are not just hard to investigate, but they're even harder to prosecute. Because in order to have a very successful prosecution of a human trafficking case, you need a victim. And it's very important for your victim to be able to participate in the prosecutorial process of the case. And so when I say our task force is unique, it's unique in the way where we have formed an amazing partnership with the Nancy J. Cotterman Center. And the Nancy J. Cotterman Center is our primary direct care service provider for all of our task force cases. And so we ensure, and the task force officers ensure, that once there is an identification and once there is a recovery of a human that has been affected by or has the experience of human trafficking, we are connecting them immediately to services. We are connecting them to the Nancy J. Cotterman Center, because we understand that in order for you to have a healthy case, you have to have a healthy survivor, a healthy victim, and not just physically healthy. Human trafficking is such a traumatic experience to go through, because human trafficking survivors are experiencing complex trauma. So they're experiencing trauma incidences over and over and over again. And the reason it's complex is because they're experiencing a lot of this trauma by someone that they trust or someone they have grown to trust. And so with the task force, investigating these cases throughout the county of Broward in the areas where we have the jurisdictional permission to do so, when we're doing this, we're also taking into consideration that once recovery is made, the primary thing, not just apart from arresting the trafficker, is to make sure that the survivor is getting their tangible needs met at that specific time. Because going forward with the case really counts on the fact that our victim is healthy and whole and able to participate in the prosecutorial process of that case.
Thank you. Thank you for that response. And we're going to add to that with Sergeant Erica Rocky to tell us a little bit about the online safety. In 2020 in the US, 59% of online recruitment of identified victims in active cases took place on Facebook alone. Can you shed some light on the internet safety of our children? We have a lot of parents who are here that needs to understand that your children being online is also the responsibility to keep them safe. Can you shed a little light on that for us? And give us any details or statistics that you may have.
Okay, hello? Hi. Absolutely. So the internet is actually, where we find, especially in my unit, that most children are exploited, because children are on the internet every day. It is everywhere. They're on their phones, tablets, phones. Even if they go to the library, they have the internet where they can access. It is very important in our community to be, and I don't want to say on top of, but to monitor your children on the internet. It is important to have passcodes for all of their things, and they're going to be upset, but it's important so that you can keep them safe. We've had plenty of cases where these traffickers or individuals, especially in school times, will, for example, we had a case for Snapchat. The individual used location services, hung out by the school, turned on his location services, and started messaging the children that had their location services on. Started sending the same message over and over until one child or two children responded to that message. You can send the message to 1,000 kids, but if 2 kids respond, that's 2 kids too many. So we really have to pay attention to our children on the internet. And they know the computers and the phones better than you do, better than I do. Every day we're getting new tips about new applications, and we don't know about them. We have to learn about them. And we're always playing catch up. So it's just very important that you do your best to try to monitor and talk with your kids, have that open communication so that they feel safe if somebody has reached out to them.
Thank you. Detective Yusina, do you have anything to add to that?
Basically what you said about the parents having that open dialect, because there's a lot of parents, I feel that the topic of sex in general, the topic of what's appropriate at what age is something that maybe wasn't talked to parents as a children. And so it's uncomfortable for some people. And so some of these topics or conversations are being brought to and spoken about by other children who have unsupervised access. So it's not your child that has, the parent controls and I'm on top of my child, but they're on a school bus and they sit next to a child who unfortunately doesn't have that protection from their parents or their current situation. So you can protect your child, but having that open dialect and trust is the best, because you can't protect them from the world in that sense, because it's everywhere and they might be sitting next to a child that's vulnerable themselves and have access to that. So just open communication, trust, dialect, and know their passwords, because that's helpful for me.
Know their passwords. Yes, and make sure you tell your children you love them, so this way they feel comfortable coming to you to have the difficult conversation rather than going to a perpetrator to do that. So we have our Miss Ubals from the Nancy J. Cotterman Center. You see children coming through, correct? How do you respond and manage with parents who are bringing their children that are affected by this trauma?
Hello? So, yes, we see a lot of children coming to Nancy J.
Speak up a little bit more for me.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just a little soft-spoken, so.
It's okay.
So we do see a lot of children that do come to Nancy J. Cotterman Center just for a variety of reasons, not just human trafficking. My unit does specialize in human trafficking. I do see a lot of children and adults as well. One of the most important things is really to listen to the individual and meet them where they're at. A lot of times, a person might not identify as a victim of trafficking for a variety of different reasons. Maybe they just are not aware of what the definition of human trafficking is, or maybe they're still in it and they've just been recovered and there's some type of trauma bonding that's going on. So it's really important just to listen to every client. Every case is different, and assess what the unique needs of that individual are, and then work from there.
Thank you. We'll go to Ms. Charday. From a spiritual, and I'm going into your outside profession now, from a spiritual perspective, how would you say the church should manage their congregation in educating them on this topic?
Testing. Well, I appreciate that question, and rarely we get that question. If anyone belongs to a church or a place of worship, it's important to open the doors, because if you notice, every church or place of worship is connected to a community. It's located in a neighborhood. It's located, in most cases, in an impoverished neighborhood as well, which is, they're more vulnerable to human trafficking, the population in those neighborhoods. So it's important to have a open dialogue and open conversation with those who attend the church, and also do community outreach for those who are around in surrounding areas. Reach out to Nancy J. Cotterman Center, reach out to the state attorney's office, reach out to BSO. Get these individuals who specialize in these conversations to your churches, to your community service organizations that you may belong to, and have these conversations, and also know and give tips to your average everyday person, your church mother who's been in the church for 20 some odd years or 40 some odd years, your average youth that is getting involved in school or doing very well but want to do community service as well. You can reach out to these average people that are in your churches, in your community service, in your schools, and also reach out to these people who are holding these conversations. Dr. I appreciate you having us here. So I appreciate that question. It's important to have that dialogue, and also bring service providers in to speak to the congregation or your prospective people, because not all heroes wear a cape. Let's just leave it at that.
Very nice. Say that again.
Not all heroes wear a cape. So an average person can stop a whole human trafficking ring, and you never even know, just by listening and communicating with an individual that may seem, hey, this person seems a little off. Just pay attention to the signs, and have that dialogue with the professionals so you know what signs to look for when you see these people. Because I don't want to keep going on and on, but in church they say come as you are. So we open the doors to people who have been through all walks of life, right? And it's important not to pass judgment on those people, because you never know what they've been through. And like I said, it's important to be knowledgeable on what's going on so you'll be able to stop, prevent, and intervene when these things happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to go to Jamaica now. Joy Crawford. Joy Crawford works with children who have been sexual abused. Some of these children contract STDs from their abusers and get pregnant from their abusers. As you know, April is National Child Sexual Abuse Awareness Month. Joy, can you shed a little light on child sexual abuse and what you do to combat that in Jamaica and what we can probably learn from you? Oh, she's frozen. Oh, the internet. All right, Joy, pause. We're coming right back. So I know I didn't really say my bio, say much about me, but I am the founder and president of Female Development World Organization. That's an organization that was formed to raise awareness around child sexual abuse and human trafficking. Did you know that Florida is the first state to teach human trafficking education in schools to our children? Anyone in the audience knew that? Okay, so we are now, it's law that we are educating the children, and as Sharday says, we have to meet them where they are. I worked with Florida legislators to craft the language for that bill, and that bill later became statute by the Department of Education. And you know why I worked so hard to make that happen? Because I feel as though children are not with their parents all the time. And if the perpetrators know how to reach and recruit our children, let's educate the children so they know what human trafficking is, right? Jamara, you worked very close with the state attorney's office. Tell us a little bit about runaway children, because sometimes children are stigmatized and they become vulnerable because of how adults tend to talk to them, look at them, treat them. And then they run away, and then we judge them that they're the problem. So talk to us a little bit about runaway children and maybe tie it into human trafficking prevention.
That's a loaded question for me.
It's a very long question, but you know,
Tracy's in the audience laughing because she knows how I am. I don't like the word runaway.
Okay.
Okay. Especially when it comes to children. For me, I don't care how a child becomes missing, but anytime you don't know the whereabouts of a child, they're in danger. I don't care how they became missing. And my thing is that we have to be careful when we're talking about runaways and we're talking about children specifically in Broward County. I think it's very important for us to be mindful of language, because language matters. And language shapes your perceptions. What you think is how you help. What you think is how you help. So when we're talking about a runaway child as opposed to a missing child, for some people, that gives you two different perceptions of how you're going to respond to the needs of that child and to the fact that that child is missing. The child may have run away, yes. Why did the child run away? Where is the child running from, or what is the child running to? At the end of the day, the child is missing. So the same energy and outrage and response and media attention that you give for a child that is missing, you should give for a child that we have quote unquote labeled as a runaway. Because at the end of the day, it's a child. That child is whereabouts are unknown. That child is missing. That child is vulnerable. That child is prey for any person out there in the streets, a predator waiting. Because we know that once a child hits the street, their risk factor, their vulnerabilities, those levels heighten. Because you know why? Because now their needs heighten, right? Because now they're needing food, clothing, and shelter, right? And so anytime you have a vulnerability, anytime a child that's on the street has a vulnerability, their risk factor level rises. Because anytime you have a need, you always have someone out there that's willing to exploit that need, especially if it's a child. So and you know, a young lady that I work with, she's a survivor, and she gave me an amazing analogy one time. And she said to me, she said, you know, when your pet goes missing, when your dog and your cat goes missing, we put up posters all around the city looking for our pet, our dog and our cat. And when our pet returns, we're so happy and we're so excited and we're a good dog, good cat. But when our children go missing and they come back, we get bad kid. Why did you go missing? Why did you do that? And I would just implore everyone to look as hard for our kids as you look for your pets.
Wow. Wow. Look as hard for your kids as you do your pets. That is deep. That is very deep. You know, there are several types of trafficking. Can one of you elaborate on labor trafficking? Because a lot of people think that trafficking is sexual exploitation, but labor trafficking is just as prevalent. And, you know, a lot of individuals, the missing children versus the runaway, do get caught up into labor trafficking. Can one of you, our great panelists, talk about labor trafficking? From our Nancy J, you want to touch that, Jamaro? Go ahead.
I'll start, you finish. So that's a great question. And it's a great question because there's a myth and a misconception that sex trafficking drives human trafficking. But it's actually, that's not true. Labor trafficking is what drives human trafficking. You know, human trafficking generates over $150 billion a year worldwide. And when we talk about labor trafficking as opposed to sex trafficking, when you're looking at the demographics of how a person can be exploited under labor, and you look at the demographics of how a person can be exploited sexually, the labor trafficking demographics are much more expansive, right? So we have hotels, we have construction, we have agriculture, we have picking seasons, we have restaurants, we have the door-to-door sales. We have so many different avenues, right, in which a person can be exploited for the purposes of labor. So, of course, the numbers for those that are exploited under labor are going to be significantly higher than those that are exploited for sex. But because sex is such a sexy word, right? And, you know, when you hear the word sex, you automatically, your antennas, you know, go up. And when you hear the word labor, you really, you know, your antennas really don't go up because you really don't understand that much how somebody can be exploited, you know, via labor. But it is significantly higher in numbers as far as labor trafficking. And labor trafficking is very tricky, especially when it comes to kids, because you're talking about labor laws and how many hours a day a kid can work. So it's a lot more difficult to deal with. So it's not really put out there that much because a lot of people really don't understand it because it is very complex. You want to add to that?
I think one of the things to keep in mind is there's a difference between labor trafficking and just, I don't know if it would be labor exploitation or what the word would be, with not being satisfied with a job. Because we've all had jobs that we didn't like, that we weren't paid the same as the person next to us. Maybe we weren't paid overtime. Maybe, you know, we were working long hours in horrible working conditions. But that doesn't mean that you were trafficked. Labor trafficking is basically being forced to work with the threat that if you don't do this job, you're going to die. Or if you don't do this, they're going to kill your family member. Or they're holding on to your documentation and they're threatening to call immigration on you or have you deported. So there is a big difference between the two. And I think here in South Florida, or in Florida, we don't think of labor trafficking. I think we think of more of like the sex trafficking, but it is a growing industry. We have a lot of agricultural fields here. And I know that from my experience of working with unaccompanied minors, a lot of the young people who do come to this country are being exploited for labor and being forced to, fix roofs, pick strawberries or oranges, you name it. It is something that's happening here in our backyard.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as we talk about sex trafficking, we talk about labor trafficking. Well, one thing that a lot of people don't talk about is organ trafficking, the unforeseen form of human trafficking. In an article in 2018, when describing organ trafficking, there is often confusion as to how this crime can happen. Global Financial Integrity estimate that 10% of all organ transplants, including lungs, heart, and liver, are done via trafficked organs. And this information is from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. However, the most prominent organs that are traded illicitly are kidneys, with WHO estimated that 10,000 kidneys are traded on the black market worldwide annually, or more than one every hour. Now, we have our expert subject matters here, and I know we're talking about the various form of trafficking, but do you guys ever come across any of this where there's organs? Okay, so it's not new, right? So we want everyone to know that there are multiple forms of trafficking, and that's why I've brought this up. Now, when I talked about, Joy, can you say something? Let me see if you're back, if we can hear you.
I am hearing you now.
Okay, good. So as we're talking about the various forms of trafficking, I want to talk about our children who are being abused sexually. And as I stated before, this month is National Child Sexual Abuse Awareness Month. Can you talk to us about the children that you come across that are affected by child sexual abuse?
All right, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Are you hearing me clearly now?
And if you can speak up in your mic, because you got, yeah.
Are you hearing me any better?
A little bit, go ahead. Oh my goodness, she froze again. All right, see, talk about internet. All right, so let's go right back to internet. One of the I believe it's our June symposium we did, or another symposium I did, where someone mentioned that parents think that your child are being caught in the park or at the mall after school. But when they're home around 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, with their phones in their hands, does a child have to meet that perpetrator to be trafficked online?
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so absolutely not. A lot of the trafficking that we get can start online. A lot of times when your kids are at home and they're on the internet, a lot of them just want to feel known, welcomed, accepted, and they go online. And they meet different people, or they see that, oh, my friend is friends with this person, I can talk to them, they must be safe. So they start talking to them, they build relationships with them, they feel connected to them. And when they start to feel connected to them, this person who is out here every day doing this all hours of the day, you work a 40-hour job. A trafficker works this job every minute of every day. So that's all they do. And when this person is out there, they know how to take care of and take advantage of these vulnerable children. And so eventually they will get them to send a picture. Many times if the child does send a picture of themselves, that's when it begins. The trafficker or individual on the other side starts to take advantage of them, threatening them. if you don't send me more, or if you don't send me money, or if you don't meet me and do these acts, I will expose you. I'll send this to your family. I'll send this to your friends. You'll be embarrassed. And a lot of times, these kids don't tell their parents. They get re-victimized. They keep sending pictures, or they go and meet these individuals they don't know because they don't want to be embarrassed. And that is one of the main ways that we get a lot of our cases. And this just happens from them sitting in their bedrooms at night, just talking to whoever on whatever application.
So for those of you who are watching online, your child, please understand this, that your child don't necessarily have to be out there in the streets to be trafficked, right? They could be trafficked right in their bedroom at home. So it is very important for you to know your children activity online. It is very dangerous. I've met someone myself who did not meet the trafficker, but the trauma that that person experienced, they are now going through a lifetime of psych issues, cutting, and talk about some of these trauma, I would say, signs, Sade, that you may see young people come in to say, okay, you know that these people are being traumatized because of their actions as victims?
Well, trauma can show up in various ways. It could be in a person, just a nervous tap, they develop, or, quiet. They don't want to really speak around you. It can show up in various ways, so it's kind of hard to pinpoint different things. I would say pay attention to the person or child who is quiet, who doesn't want to open up as much. Pay attention to the one who is actually more, maybe, for lack of a better word, promiscuous. Who's a little more friendlier out there in that way. That could be someone who experienced trauma as well. So it shows in various ways. I would say the way to really know and understand is to be trauma informed and to have conversations and be a person that someone can open up to. In our perspective workspaces, you meet people every day. At Nancy J. Carterman Center, I have survivors that come in that is just they're good with disclosing, oh, this happened to me, yep, I need this. They'll tell me what they want and what they need and what we can do to provide those services. And then there's some who experience all types of trauma and sexual assault that they do not want to get involved in our therapy, our free therapy services. They don't want to be involved with anything. They don't want law enforcement involved. They're like, leave me alone, stay out of it, don't talk to me, don't call me, nothing of that nature. But they also experience trauma as well. So you have to just navigate. Each person is different. No person is the same. No one wears their trauma in the same way as the other. So in a roundabout way, everyone just should be aware. Right? There's no telltale signs. Everyone is different.
Thank you very much. And as you mentioned that, I am going to tap on Jamaro for the status of girl in 2018, and she was very instrumental in this report. The status of girls and young women in Broward County. 1 out of 7 girls will experience sexual violence, and 1 in 9 girls will experience physical dating violence or will be harmed by an intimate partner. Let's talk about that as far as domestic violence in our teens and our children. What can we do to shed light on that and even to prevent that? Or work to prevent it?
Okay, so that's a good question, because when we're talking about domestic violence and we're trying to marry that, we're talking about dating violence and we're marrying that with trafficking, we see that a lot, Christine, we see that a lot. And we see that a lot, Monica, because what happens is that when we're talking about sex trafficking and we're talking about dating violence, a lot of times we see that in the Romeo trafficking relationships, where you have this person, and it could be a child or an adult, where you have this person that has been groomed by this perpetrator, by this trafficker, into thinking that they're in an actual relationship, that they're actually dating, right? And so there are times and there are instances, and I've worked with survivors of trafficking where the perpetrator wasn't charged with trafficking, the perpetrator was actually charged with domestic violence, because there was an establishment that they were in a dating relationship. They were actually in an intimate relationship for at least 6 months or more, or they had resided together. So you were able to, get that charge of dating violence, or you were able to get that charge of domestic violence. Listen, statistics say that, 9 out of 10 humans who are violated, they are violated by someone that they know, right? And we know that 60% of children that are sexually abused and violated or sexually abused or violated by a family member or a parent. We know that 40% are violated by a close family friend or a trusted adult. And we know that only 10% are violated by strangers. So we know that the common denominator is trust, right? And so I think, to answer your question, how we can try to combat a lot of this dating violence and the healthy versus the unhealthy relationships as it relates to our young people and those that fall prey to the narcissists and the traffickers, is to give them a proper, healthy, clear definition of what safety looks like first, what love looks like second, right? And three, what healthy looks like, right? So I think it is on us to provide our young people with the tools, because statistics also show that from the ages 16 to 24, those are the ages that have the highest percentages of dating violence, of domestic violence, right? So for me, when you're looking at those statistics at that age range, 16 to 24, that's high school and college, right? We need to do a better job of giving proper definitions of what safety, love, and healthy looks like.
Thank you so much. Very, very good response to that. Ms. Bodai, Audrey. All right, we'll come back to her. The Trafficking in Persons report for June 2023 states that boys represents the fastest growing segment of identified human trafficking victims. Again, this is the Trafficking in Persons report 2023, states that boys represents the fastest growing segment of identified human trafficking victims. UNODC Global Report on Trafficking in Person release notes that the percentage of boys identified as victims of human trafficking are quite quintupled between 2004 and 2020, a much larger increase than for men, women, or girls. So a lot of times people have the thought that it is girls who are highly affected by trafficking, but the report that just came out last year, our TIP report, states that boys are representing the fastest growing segment. Does anyone want to touch on that for me? Can someone talk about that? Yes, go ahead.
So I think that, and we have seen a huge spike with males becoming victims to any type of extortion, but I do think that the reason is that males have it's a different stigma to them. So when things start to happen to them, because they're online just like all the other girls are, and when they're online and someone takes advantage of them, or when they're in person, or they meet somebody and they're taken advantage of, they're less likely to report it. And therefore, if they're less likely to tell their family members or friends or law enforcement, it continues. And if it continues, it tends to get worse. And we've also seen a spike in suicides with boys in the teenage range from about 12 to 17. There may be higher also, it's just those are the statistics for us because they're juveniles. And it's because they don't know how to deal with the stress of this is happening to them. And therefore, their only way out, they think, is that they have to kill themselves. So there's been a huge rise in the last 2 years, especially after COVID. And when more people were online, it just continued to rise. So I believe that it's just that they don't have that same comfort and understanding that they can come to people also.
Thank you. Thank you for shedding some light on that. So I'm going to move forward. Do we have, before I go any further, it is now 7:49 and, we're doing all the talking. If anyone in the audience have a question based on what you're hearing today, please come forth. The mic is here, or Debbie, if anyone have any questions, you want to take the mic to them. Does anyone in the audience right now have a question that they would like to ask the panelists? Okay. All right. So please, if you have a question, just let us know. Did you know in 2023, Florida governor signed a bill, SB 1690, Sexual Exploitation and Human Trafficking, requiring residential treatment centers for children to place signs on their premises to warn children about the danger signs of human trafficking and to demonstrate avenues for reporting instances of trafficking, requiring safe houses and foster homes to give kids age-appropriate programming to educate them on the signs and dangers of commercial sexual exploitation. So let's talk about these safe houses, because the word safe means that it's supposed to be a safe house. We have our law enforcement here. What can we as community do? And I'm thankful for this bill, because I've often heard that these safe houses harbor trafficking. Can someone elaborate or talk about that? I see someone talking. Oh, we have someone in the audience that can speak to that? Get a mic and come, please.
This is unorthodox, but Christine Jacobson with DCF can give you an amazing answer to that
Beautiful.
question.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I'm Christine Jacobson. I'm the Criminal Justice Coordinator for the Southeast Region for Department of Children and Families. Basically, the short end of it, the meaning of that is I deal with all things human trafficking, missing children, and any law enforcement issues that people are having with CPAS. So maybe you have to talk to me about that. Anyway, so the safe harbor homes that were created, there's two types. There's the community children ones, which are considered safe homes. And those are for children in the community that are not under dependent care. And we go through a meeting about this. Usually we receive a report with regards to a child being human trafficked. We go through, and any child that's verified, we can make a determination whether that child needs a placement into a safe home or into a safe foster home. Now, for our children that are already under dependent care, that means our foster care kids, they can go to specialized placements which do have treatments. Any safe home and safe foster home does have a treatment program. It usually lasts about 6 months. And it's to get them out of that life and work with it. It is not a lock facility, so there's no locking them down, but we do try to convince them to stay and work through the programs. But this is available for any child that's been verified through our meetings, which is considered a multidisciplinary team meeting, which means a lot of people meet up and they talk about the situation with that particular child to make a determination whether or not it is really a verified case. There's a lot of criteria that goes behind that, but basically we have to have some evidence to support. The detectives here, they are usually on these type of meetings. Jamaro is, Monica is, there's a lot of people here that get involved in these type of meetings. but we try and move forward and make sure that these children get the services and the treatment that they need so that they don't step into that life again. And if they do, we try and bring them back and get them back out of that life quickly as possible through services like through Nancy J. Cotterman Center with their H-Tree treatment teams, and there's some other programs out there in the state that's available. So it's not just here in Broward, but there's other portions of the state, and this is a statewide thing. There's about a dozen or more safe homes throughout the state, so the child generally wouldn't be placed in the same county that they live in. Reason being, we don't want the trafficker to find them. And so we do try and protect the anonymity of the children that are in there so that they aren't at risk for traffickers to find them again.
We do
Well,
have
you came to the rescue just in time.
Persons curriculum. It was introduced in secondary schools.
Yes, Miss Bodai, we're hearing you. Go ahead.
Yes, I was talking that in Jamaica we introduced the trafficking in persons curriculum. It was introduced in the secondary schools from like grade 7 to 9. So a conversation a while back was talking about how do you get the information out to the younger persons who may not be getting the information or the education or sensitization at home, either in terms of human trafficking, but also in sexual exploitation and so on. We also had, but it was interrupted a bit through COVID, where we also had trafficking in persons tip clubs at school, much like how you had like the Girl Guides and the Brownies, so that the information can be passed on to the youngsters in the language and in the way and dramatized skit and so forth and so on. So we found that was an interesting way of getting the message out and getting the youngsters to be aware. That helped a lot in the early days when we were talking about child abuse and trying to get child protection popularized and understood in Jamaica in terms of how where you start the information from, so the youngsters themselves are aware. So they would be
frozen again. Thank you, Ms. Bodai, for sharing that information on what you're doing in Jamaica to combat this issue. Systematically, there are no easy fixes, and Joy will come back to you in a minute. There are no easy fixes. Some potential solutions include
taught sometimes by the guidance counselor, but also by specialist teacher. And we also had the club.
All right, Ms. Badai, you're frozen again, so we'll come back to you in just a minute. I want to talk about comprehensive medical care, including mental health and psychological support that is trauma-informed. I know we spoke about that a little bit. But a lot of times, victims make it into the hospitals. Our goal is to hope that the doctors and the healthcare professionals are fully trained. But what about law enforcement when it comes to training to ensure that those who are out there can identify someone who may be going through a trauma versus someone who may be committing a crime?
So we have monthly meetings where we go reach out to the district offices and we try to present roll call trainings for them. And one of the most important things is that we have to remind these deputies and their supervisors, first of all, if you have a case like, where there might be a potential victim, I want that supervisor to choose his best employee. Sometimes it's the woman that's on the scene that has a little bit more of compassion and somebody can feel like they can connect to them. And, recently I had a case and this female deputy was able to take a child aside and get down to their level and say, what's really going on? Is there anything that you're scared of? Do you feel safe at home? And one of the important things is that it starts with parents. and the teachings, but teachings can come from pastors, they can come from teachers, they can come from anybody in the community, because you're born with your parents, but not necessarily sometimes they're the best in the situation. So I think Tarana Burke said it the best, that if a rule is broken, it's not necessarily your fault. And we have to remind children that there's a lot of shame with that. And so that's something that I teach the deputies. You know, I say, when you go out there, if there is a rule that is broken, remind the children that it is not their fault. They are the child in this situation, no matter their age. A lot of them have been groomed. And the other thing is that I want my deputies, when they're responding and talking to these victims, is that there's such a difficult level when you have a father figure like mine who told me, if anybody touches you, I'm gonna, go find that person and beat him up. Well, as a child, I don't want to see my dad go to jail. So I want to protect my family system, and I'm not going to tell him that my uncle touched me, because the ramifications that come with it are, am I going to mess up the family? Are my parents going to get divorced? Is my stepdad going to go to jail? Is my dad going to go to jail because he beat up my uncle? So there's so many things that weigh heavy on these children, and that's something that I want my deputies to understand, respect, and do the best that they can. And sometimes they're, if they feel like, hey, something's going on, they know us. There's about 15 of our detectives, and I've had a couple of them reach out to us and say, hey, I think there's something else going on here. I wasn't really able to get to it, but can you look into this for me? So just having a good open relationship and teaching everybody to take a step back, not assume that the runaway is just a bad kid. There's something else that's going on, that's upsetting that child. So it starts with us. We're the first contact a lot of the times, and they're bad situations, so.
That's very good to know, and that's very good for the public to know that our law enforcement are having these conversations, because, as she mentioned, is help them to understand that it's not their fault. A lot of times, victims go through life in trauma just blaming themselves that what happened to me was my fault. So thank you for ensuring that your staff, when they're on the streets, to help to identify and to ensure these children that it's not their fault. Now, I know we didn't talk about substance abuse, right? A lot of victims, so I work in a substance abuse treatment facility, and a lot of times when I see a person's chart on my desk is after their deceased. And when you look back at that record, you see their past of where it started, and then you see through their life of using substance to try to drown out the trauma that they've experienced as a child. Can one of you, or behavioral health, talk about substance abuse and trauma?
Well, usually, as you said, substance abuse can be a way of coping. We call that mal coping skills. So those who get into like the drugs, and that's their way of dealing with their trauma, and it's a way of escaping. It can start off as little as marijuana to cocaine to heroin or whatever their vice is. We see that a lot in the CJ Carterman Center. Usually we try to make sure they get the help that they need to recover from drugs before getting any services, but it coincides in most cases, as far as that's the way that these survivors cope with their trauma. Also with human trafficking, we've seen in like different, like if you ever seen the movie Taken, I know that's a very popular movie when it comes to shedding light on human trafficking. They use they induce their survivors or victims with drugs to make them a little drowsy and things of that nature in order to conduct their sexual acts when it comes to sex trafficking, and things like that. So drugs are very prominent when it comes to survivors and victims, and in a human trafficking realm. Okay, that's it.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
It also, I want to add to that, because what we see a lot of, and just piggybacking off what the young lady said, the traffickers will oftentimes, a lot of times, will use drugs to, we call it invisible chains. And what they will do is, if they don't need to, beat them or chain them up or anything like that, if they can get them addicted to a substance, if they can get them dependent on a substance, then not only are they dependent on that substance, they're dependent upon them, the trafficker, right? And so they use that to keep them under their thumb. You have some people, both adults and minors, who have never indulged or engaged in drugs activity until they met that perpetrator, that trafficker. And that trafficker introduces that substance into that person's life for the sole purpose to be able to exploit them and to control them.
Wow. Thank you for shedding some light on that. Let me tell you, there's just so much, we're in a world right now that, as you can see, the weather is so beautiful, the trees, this facility, we're able to connect with individuals from Jamaica. But as beautiful as this world is, it's also dangerous, right? To our children and our families. Oh, you have a question. Come on up. And as she's making her way up, I just want to let everyone know that it is very important for you, if you're a parent, an aunt, an uncle, to tell that child that you love them. I didn't hear my mom tell me she loved me until I was 30. And for whatever her reasons are, I'm not going to say it here, but I understand what the trauma that she went through to prevent that. And after that, we never stopped telling each other that we loved each other because we understood. So I am just going to say it's important that children hear it from the home before they go out in the street and hear it the wrong way. Go ahead with your question, please.
Hello? Okay. So it's not necessarily a question, but I just wanted to piggyback on what you said. My name is Kathy Haygood. I work at Women in Distress. We have an education and prevention department, which I happen to work in. We have 2 curriculums, one for middle school, which is 8 sessions, and one for middle school called BOLD, which is 5 sessions. So we are trying to address the preventative part of it, giving these kids the language and the tools, how to identify red flags, how to set boundaries, what is a healthy relationship. So it's a very interactive program, and we're in almost all of the peer counseling programs in the Broward County schools. So just wanted to put that out there. And the prevention piece is so critical. And I was a teacher 25 years. I just retired in June, started working at Women in Distress in October. And I thought I understood what domestic violence was. I've had so many students over the years who, unfortunately, we're experiencing violence in the home, or we're in an intimate partner dating violent situation. I've been subpoenaed. My attendance has been subpoenaed. I thought I understood it until I started working at Women in Distress, and I realized I knew nothing. It's such a complex issue. I'm not telling you guys anything you don't already know, but I'm so really privileged to be a part of this component, because I see the critical need that these kids need, the language. They need to be able to identify a safe adult and someone that they can talk to and trust, that they can really trust. So thank you. Thank you for everything that you're doing, all your work. So important. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Women in Distress. They're doing an awesome job in the community. And we're going to close out now. We lost Joy, and we still have Miss Budai. on. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go down. I'm just going to have each person just say their final thoughts that they want to leave with the audience. And before you do that, I just want to leave with you the National Human Trafficking Hotline number, 888-373-7888. Again, that's 888-373-7888. See something, say something. Ms. Charday, you may go ahead with your final thoughts, please.
All right, thank you for having us. As we have a table here in Nancy J. Kahneman Center, please go ahead and pick up some things on your way out. I appreciate the opportunity. I am a victim advocate there, so like I said, I deal with sexual assault victims. Please get the brochures. Give it out to anyone you may know. It's important. A lot of people don't know that Nancy J. Kahneman Center is the one and only rape crisis center in Broward County, and we service the whole county. So it's important to have this information out there because everyone knows someone who has been assaulted. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate everything.
Thank you. And before you go, just to let you know, for the Nancy J. Kahneman Center, you can be a victim from years ago and still get service from them, correct?
Yes, we service all victims. It does not matter when the crime happened. We service all. Everything is free of charge. We have medical staff on site. We have therapy. We have crisis intervention. We have our human trafficking team. We have our child protection team. It's a one-stop shop. So please do not hesitate to look us up.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for having us.
Coming to you next, Ms. Budai.
To be on. I am Audrey Budai. We are committed to increasing our efforts to carry out this work and this fight against trafficking in persons, child abuse, sexual abuse, and so on. So our tagline is, be wise, open your eyes, spot them, stop them, and report them. And we have a registry line for the children, 211-311. So you can, for child, 811 for child victims and 211 in Jamaica. We also have an office of the National Rapporteur that we didn't talk about. We're the first in the Caribbean because they give an independent report internationally. And we have 311 for Crime Stop, and it is anonymous tip line. So be wise, open your eyes, spot them, stop them, report them.
Thank you. Be wise and open your eyes. I like that, Ms. Budai. Thank you very much. All right, you may go ahead and finish, Detective.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you so much for having us here. We love to go out into the community and teach awareness. I think it is very important. If you know more and you know more, we can prevent and save more people. There are not enough law enforcement. We need everybody's assistance. If you ever need to make a report, as you said, there's the National Center for Human Trafficking. We also have the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. You can make an online report. And if you guys ever need any information or you'd like us to come present within your community, your schools, your churches, you can reach out to the Broward Sheriff's Office. They'll get you in contact with me and we'll come out and present to children, adults, or anyone else in your community. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just would like to say that as the ones who sit there and talk to the victims themselves when they report these things, I think one of the most important things that you can say from our aspect is, I believe you. And that's so powerful to some people because when you are a victim, you're a survivor, that knowing that somebody believes you is the most important thing because a lot of the times the system going through it is very challenging and struggling and doesn't always work out for the survivor themselves. But knowing that somebody does believe you and will fight for you and is very important. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
I think one of the takeaways is to just remember what you learned tonight and take this back and share it. I think awareness is the most important thing, and it starts tonight. Share what you've learned with your family, your friends, your neighbor. Have those discussions with your children. This is an issue that's affecting our community, and it takes the community to combat it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all of the panelists. It's been an honor to sit here with you all. My takeaway is going to be this. I need for everyone to understand that we are not going to arrest our way out of human trafficking. This is a human rights issue. This is a heart issue. And it's going to take more than law enforcement. It's going to take more than legislation. It's going to take more than the feds. It's going to take people to actually start caring about what's happening to other people. Human trafficking is a crime against a human. And until we see everyone as a human, and until we see everyone as a person, regardless of how you think they're living their life, how you think they should be living their life, I would hope that we come to learn that everyone is entitled to life, to freedom, and safety.
Thank you very much. And I am just going to say, community doing their part. Safety is the most essential human needs. Some communities are safer than others. Get to know your neighbors. Looking out for each other. Community-based safety. Get to know and understand your community. What is happening? Who's around? Good things happen when neighbors get together. Report crime as soon as possible. Keep your homes lighted. Host community gathering. Create that village. Let's go back to that village, right? And invest in shared green spaces, because a community that is free of blight breeds happiness, breeds environmental changes, and it reduces crime. So, thank you all so much to our distinguished panelists who have joined us tonight here in person, and to our panelists who have joined us online. We greatly appreciate every vendor who attended here today. We want to say thank you to the Alley Cultural Center, Art Center, for hosting us. We want to say thank you to the City of Pompano Beach staff and to BSO. And thank you, Major, for allowing your team to impart with us today. Debbie Banner, you have done a great job in coordinating everything here today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Irie Times, who is live streaming the event today, so you can always go back if you miss it, and you can share the link. We also have a young lady who is from, say where you're from? Kaplan News. She's from Kaplan News, so if she approached you to interview you, please share your thoughts with her. I don't know if I miss anyone in saying thank you. Debbie, you're going to help me with that, right? Oh, we have Kiwanis in the house. Wave your hands, Kiwanis International. Thank you so much for joining us. We wish everyone a safe travel home. Make sure you get a plate, something to eat as you make your way home, okay? Again, and you can always find more about my organization at fdwo.org. Again, that's fdwo.org. And feel free to make a donation to the great work that we're doing. Thank you, and have a good night. Ms. Bodai, I will call you shortly. Thank you for joining us on Zoom.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us.